A couple months ago on my Instagram, I made a post where I was flying my drone really high above a farmer's field and then diving down a mountain. And when I made that post, I got a couple DMs from people saying, "Hey, I have the exact same drone as you. How do you get it to go so far? I can only go the distance of my yard or the field near my house. Is there something that I have to buy if I want to do that as well?" And the answer is both yes and no. Because what I've been learning over time is that there isn't one single thing that will completely allow you to maximize your distance, but there are a variety of things that you can do to incrementally let you fly further and further. And some of them are things that you have to buy, and others are things that you can probably do with the gear that you already have. So in this week's video, I thought I'd share with you guys some of the things that have helped me increase the range of my video feed and my radio link. Now, I should mention that this isn't going to be a complete guide. I still consider myself a fairly new FPV pilot, and there are so many people out there that could give you a more comprehensive and technical guide on this topic. I just want to share with you guys some of the things that I've personally done and I feel have helped me the most, in hopes that it makes some of the basics more accessible to those of you starting out. I also want to preface this by saying that I'm currently using analog goggles, and I'm going to share my experience with those. However, I'm also going to try to do my best to explain which of these tips would apply to those of you using digital goggles as well. That being said, here are the 9 things that have helped me increase my range and fly further. And I'm going to start with 3 beginner mistakes that I have made and you might be making as well. Mistake number 1, flying with broken or disconnected gear. Now, I want to start with this very basic step because you have to make sure that your gear is functioning as it's supposed to, or you're not going to get very far regardless of how many of the following tips you apply. If you're going to fly your drone for the first time, or you just had a big crash, and you notice that you're getting bad video or radio reception shortly after you take off, you should probably land your quad and check your gear. If my video feed starts to get staticky a few feet away, I found that it's usually a problem with my antenna or this pigtail connector that connects the antenna to my video transmitter. I'll start by making sure that all my antennas are connected and screwed in all the way. Then I make sure that the pigtail connector hasn't popped out of its socket. If everything still seems to be connected, the next thing I'll do is make sure that nothing was damaged. Now, I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but usually I'll just swap out my antenna with a new one and see if I notice a difference. If I don't, then I'll swap my connector with a new one as well and see if that helps. Now, whether or not your video system looks exactly like mine, just make sure that every part of it, from the camera to the antennas, is connected and working. If it's my controller or the radio link that I'm having the problems with, I'll do a similar check and make sure that the antennas are connected to the receivers and that they haven't popped out either. I also learned that your receiver antennas are made to be a specific length. So if any part of them gets cut off or damaged, it would greatly influence the quality of your signal. So if your signal is bad and your receiver antennas seem like they might be damaged in any way, it's probably a good idea to swap them out. Mistake number 2, being on the wrong video channel. Now, this is something that I embarrassingly didn't learn until weeks after I got my first FPV drone. And after reading about other people's frustrations, it seems like I'm not the only one. If you buy a bind and fly quad, it will come preset to a certain video band and channel, each combination corresponding to a particular frequency. Now, most goggles have an auto scan feature where they will search all the available frequencies and try to find the band and channel that you are on. However, there are certain frequencies on different bands that are extremely close to each other, and it's really easy for this auto scan feature to choose the wrong channel. When it does, your drone may seem to have crystal clear video when you first put on your goggles. However, when you start flying away, that video signal will break up much faster than it would if you were on the correct channel. To check what channel your quad is actually on, your video transmitter may have a system of LED lights that will show you. You may have to read the manual to decipher the lights, or the numbers and letters might be written right on there. Otherwise, if you have your video transmitter set up in Betaflight or whichever software you use to tune your drone, you can set up your video channel on there. This may seem like a hassle when you're first starting out, but trust me, you don't want to skip this step. If you're using the digital DJI system, you're lucky, because it seems like there's only one band of 8 channels available, at least depending on your region. So I don't think that overlapping channels is going to be a problem that you're going to run into. However, I still haven't had a chance to use those yet, so don't quote me on that. And if anybody that I know is watching this video and you want to get me a gift, I don't know, just putting that out there. The third and final beginner mistake may seem like an obvious one to most, but it's not having the drone in visible range when you're flying. As soon as you start flying behind obstacles, it's going to become harder and harder to maintain a good signal. So if you want to fly your quad far, you have to be in a place with the least amount of barriers in between you and the drone. So I think a good habit to get into is, before you put on your goggles, take a minute to think about where you intend to fly and decide whether or not there's a better place where you could stand that would minimize the obstructions in your path. If you do that, make sure you're on the right channel and have working gear, you should have a good starting point for how far your drone can go. Then you can start making upgrades and adjustments in order to increase that range. Here are a few things that I've found to help me the most. Let's start with the video feed. Whether you're flying analog or digital, there are so many different types and brands of antennas that you can use on both your goggles and your quad, and some are better than others. When you buy your goggles, they will most likely come with antennas included, but many of the ones that you get bundled together are not the highest quality. Luckily, antennas are probably one of the cheapest upgrades you can make while giving you one of the biggest boosts in video quality. There are also different types of antennas that might work better in different scenarios. On my goggles here, I like to use 2 different types. The one on the top is an omni antenna, and omni is short for omnidirectional. And what that means is it'll receive a signal in 360 degrees in every direction. So whether I'm flying my drone in front of me, to the side, behind me, or above me, I'm still going to be able to receive a video signal without a problem. This is also the type of antenna that you're probably going to want to have on your quad, because no matter how you're flying and how your drone is rotated or which direction your antenna is facing, you're still going to want to pick up a video signal no matter what. The other antenna I use is a more directional antenna and is called a patch. Now, instead of creating a bubble around me, it focuses all of its strength in one direction. So in order for it to be effective, it always has to be pointed in the general direction of your drone. Now, this will allow you to fly much further along one particular path. However, you always have to make sure to keep your head in place. If you fly really far away and you turn your head to the side or you look down, you're gonna lose video reception really quickly. Now, when you're choosing your video antennas, one thing you wanna make sure is that you're getting the right type for your equipment. First of all, I mentioned this in a previous video, but there are 2 different types of polarization that you might run into. There's RHCP and LHCP. Analog drones can use either one, but you want to make sure that the one on your goggles and the one on your drones are the same type for the strongest signal. You don't want to mix and match. When it comes to the DJI system, I believe it uses LHCP, so if that's what you're using, you want to make sure that you have LHCP antennas. There are also different connector types. You might need antennas with an SMA connector or an RP-SMA connector, depending on the complementary connector on your drone. To plug in directly to a DJI unit, you would also need an MMCX connector. So figure out what types you need for your particular equipment, or your antennas will not fit. If you want to know what antennas I specifically use, I'll have links to all the gear in the description below. Upgrading your video transmitter. The video transmitter, also known as the VTX, is the device that sends the image from your camera to your goggles. And just like antennas, I learned that not all VTXs are made equally. If yours isn't that great, buying one of a higher quality can definitely give you a cleaner image. After upgrading your antennas, this is probably the next upgrade that you're going to want to make. Do some research and figure out whether the one on your drone is any good and which one is best for you. I had this one recommended to me and I am extremely happy with it. If you're flying digital, you will most likely be using the DJI Air unit or maybe a CATX Vista, so I don't think this is something that you really have to worry about. However, no matter what kind of transmitter you have, whether it's analog or digital, the next thing you should do is check whether or not you can increase its power. On my VTX, I have a few different options of output power. And as you might guess, increasing the output power will increase its strength. However, not as much as the drastically higher numbers might make you think. On this VTX, I can raise the output power incrementally from 25 milliwatts to 800 milliwatts, and I usually keep it on its highest setting. This gives me a slight boost in range and also provides more visibility when I move further behind obstacles. However, increasing the output power will provide you with exponential returns, so you really have to boost it up a lot in order to make a significant difference. Another thing that I learned though is that a higher output power is not always better in every situation, and there are a few things that are important to be mindful of. First of all, there are certain environments such as stadiums where your signal is more likely to bounce around a lot. And if you have a stronger signal, this could cause static in your video feed. This is called multipathing, and in those situations, turning down your power output could actually provide you with a cleaner signal. A really high power output could also become problematic if you're flying with others. A stronger signal could end up bleeding into other people's video feeds, creating interference and causing them to crash. Some countries also have laws in place that make it illegal to fly at higher power outputs, so make sure to take a look at your local laws. Lastly, the higher the power output, the more heat your VTX will generate, so you want to make sure that you're not just leaving it around while it's plugged into a battery, or that you're not flying when it's already really hot out, or you risk overheating your electronics. That being said, it is a really nice option to have, and in most situations, because I usually fly alone, I usually keep it turned up at 800 and it works really well for me. As soon as I land, I just make sure to unplug my battery to let my drone cool down. This next one I believe is analog specific, but all goggles have some sort of video receiver built into them. Actually, apparently they don't, and that's only a feature on certain goggles. Sorry about that, again, I'm still learning. Anyways, if you had a pair of goggles without a built-in receiver, I guess this would be even more relevant to you. With analog goggles though, you have the added option of buying an external receiver, which might give you better performance. Although many different options for these modules are available, RAPIDFIRE seems to be the most popular by a long shot. This is also the one that I decided to use, and I definitely don't regret my decision. Now, some goggles will come with a built-in bay that will fit one of these modules directly into the goggles, and others will not. Mine didn't come with one, but to work around this problem, I bought this module adapter, which just mounts onto the front of my goggles and plugs in using an AV cable. Now, it's important to know that RAPIDFIRE won't make a huge difference when you're trying to fly further away. But instead, I noticed that it really helps boost reception when I'm flying amongst obstacles. So if you want to fly your drone around your house or inside an abandoned building or amongst trees or anything like that, in those situations, RAPIDFIRE would help a lot. I also read that RAPIDFIRE can really help filter out multipathing, which, like I mentioned before, can cause interference in certain environments. So combining RAPIDFIRE with a high output power could be a good combo. Finally, we have upgrading your goggles. Now, I left this one for last because when I was starting out, upgrading my goggles seemed like an obvious solution for increasing my range. However, I learned that's a slight misconception. Although upgrading your goggles could make a difference, a lot of the things that I mentioned before would help just as much, if not more. In my opinion, buying a cheaper set of goggles along with a RAPIDFIRE module would be a much better investment than just having a high-end pair of analog goggles, which to me seem more like a luxury than a necessity. If you wanted to go all out and buy a high-end analog system, unless you're racing, I think many of you would be happier just going digital instead. So that's pretty much it for the video feed. Now, what about the radio link? When upgrading the range of my controller, I really only did one thing, and that was upgrading my radio system to CROSSFIRE. Now, there are many different types of radio systems available, but CROSSFIRE again seems to be the most popular one by a long shot, and most people seem to say that it's the most reliable. Since upgrading to CROSSFIRE, I never even get close to running out of radio range. It's always my video feed that starts to cut out first. Now, making the upgrade consists of buying this module, which will fit into most radios, and you'll also have to upgrade the receiver in your drone, which you will have to solder in. For my radio specifically, the QX7, I did have to take it apart to do a small modification in order for this to work, and some people could find that intimidating. However, it's really not that hard, and most radios will not require this. The two main types of CROSSFIRE are CROSSFIRE TX, and the smaller and slightly less powerful CROSSFIRE Micro that I use. Many controllers will have a module bay that can fit the CROSSFIRE Micro, and its signal strength is still so strong that it will be good enough for most users. Maybe if you wanted maximum security or plan on flying your drone kilometers away, the CROSSFIRE TX could be for you. However, I feel like for most users, because of its size and price, the Micro TX is the way to go. I'll also mention that TBS recently released their new controller, the Tango 2, which already has CROSSFIRE built in. So as long as you're okay with soldering in CROSSFIRE receivers into all your drones, this could also be an option for you. Now, whether or not you choose to go with CROSSFIRE or something else, upgrading your radio link will honestly give you so much peace of mind when you're flying that it's definitely worth the extra cost. But anyways, those are all the things that I've done to increase the range of my FPV drone. Once you maximize the effectiveness of your gear, you might get to a point where you start getting limited by your battery life instead. At that point, I'm guessing you'd have to start thinking about how to make your drone lighter and more efficient in order to fly further on one battery. However, I've never found the need to take it that far for my own purposes, and that would probably have to be a whole other video. I really hope that you guys learned something from this video. Again, I just want to say that these are my personal experiences and that there are probably other ways to increase your range as well. After you're done watching, I highly recommend you guys check out the comments below. There are always a couple of you with some great tips that I might have missed. Also, if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It really helps a lot. Subscribe if you want more content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.